All right, well, I'll put you on optimized duty. I'm going to jump in since we're 8 minutes in. Welcome to Weekly VC for Famous Foxes. I appreciate everyone for the flexibility of bumping yesterday's time to tonight, since most of you will know that Super Bowl was going on yesterday, so a lot of crazy things going, and hopefully people had some fun with it. It was the local team for me that was in, but unfortunately they did lose, so I think I'm pretty sure downtown was probably chaotic, but I went to bed shortly thereafter the game had wrapped up. But yeah, we'll kind of jump right into it. We've got quite a few updates. A lot of stuff went on last week. Outside of us just launching Citrus, we had a lot of items for um, enabling PNFTs for raffle as the Metaplex standard. I believe they've started to migrate collections over. I think there's four that are live currently to the new PNFT standard. Foxy Send also supports transferring PNFTs, and basically, at the end of the day, what it comes down to, at least for raffles, people in Raffle DAO are kind of asking us questions, and um, I think it'll get better in the future, but like as it stands right now, the way in which Metaplex is going about their default allow list is that there's two kinds of rule sets. One is like a pass through, so collections can make PNFTs that don't necessarily like need to have royalties enforced. Um, and they would do that for like a few different reasons, but that's like just a general rule set. The second one has to deal with this standard allow list that Metaplex has, and in order to be on that standard allow list, regardless of the rule set, you still have to pay creator royalties. So a lot of people will probably like, well, yeah, duh, that makes sense. Like that's kind of the main objective with PNFTs, and you're not wrong. The one thing that's just important to identify is even if projects set it with a new PNFT standard that they do not necessarily like need to enforce royalties for specific protocols. Those protocols, if they want to be on that default allow list, have to pay creator royalties. So as it stands right now, we are more interested in being on the default allow list than not. Um, so any collection that is migrating to PNFTs will have a royalty to be paid, currently on raffle and um, uh, it escapes me. Yeah, currently on raffle as the way it's set up, and that includes raffle and auctions. So anytime a raffle's completed, a portion of those proceeds will go to the project based off of their royalty percentage if it is migrated over to the PNFT standard. So it's an important thing for people to keep in mind if they're creating raffles. Um, there's been mixed opinions about it one way or the other. It's perfectly fine. I think in the future things may change. I think there's definitely a value prop to be said for tools like Raffle that exist. Same thing for Foxy Swap, in my opinion. That you can do things a little bit differently, which we might, but no definitive answers for that yet. And lending as well. Lending actually falls into a bucket in which Metaplex is not requiring projects or protocols to pay royalties for. As it currently stands, if it gets to the point where people are basically using lending platforms as like pseudo marketplaces, um, then I believe they'll kind of step in and say that royalties would have to be enforced if that's how it kind of becomes. I don't think it will. I think it's lending is a bit more complicated than a traditional marketplace, but I don't know who's to say they can predict what's going to happen in the future. Um, So as it stands right now, Citrus doesn't have to honor creator royalties based off of the way in which other creators agree in the space. So that will also have PNFTs enabled on it, but raffles will. And just to keep in mind for anyone that does host raffles, as you are selecting different collections and such that you want to use for it. Um, yeah. We did add in, let me just double check here. Yeah, we did add in the chess history. I really appreciate a lot of people posting them out on Twitter. I think it's quite fun. We probably should run like a special questive or something like that, just to see, how much Foxy and Soul are really the only two things it displays that people have earned. It doesn't display, if you've won transdimensional or famous foxes or, gems or anything else. I would say that that does have a decent value to it as well. It just shows Foxy and Soul, but I still think it is quite fun to see from one display. And then I know I have Citrus listed here, but then also some QL updates that we did for Citrus. So Citrus is live. We launched, our lending platform that we've been talking about for a little while. I've been talking about for a little while. I know Dev wasn't the most happy with me, talking about also like some plans that we kind of had to create before it was done. Just because sometimes it can create like undue pressure, which I definitely agree with. But stacked on top of Metaplex for our launch is supposed to be the Sunday prior to. Um, just creates some things that are a little bit more complicated. So at the end of the day, it just took a little bit longer to get things kind of fleshed out for Citrus, and we were able to relaunch it on Wednesday. It's been, I'd say fairly popular. I think it can be overwhelming for people that I think are brand new to lending, but I think those that are a little bit more seasoned can certainly see a lot of the benefits to, the way in which we've given control to folks. And we're looking at, the enhancements and things to improve lending as a whole within the NFT space, and to to give more options, to give more flexibility. We're going to have, kind of like an NFT lending guide that comes out, that does also specifically talk about Citrus, but to give a little bit more color to it. And there are a few other like decent resources out there if people are kind of interested in the NFT lending space. Um, I'm not against giving out information as well to people. I think it's a very interesting product to offer to the space, as I think there's, decent upside, decent liquidity to it, but there are also risks that can be associated with it as well. So you definitely want to know what you're doing versus just kind of getting into it just to get into it. But along those lines, after we launched it, we've gotten a ton of feedback. So first off, I really appreciate everyone that's jumped in and gave feedback. There were big things we had to modify initially, and think about the way in which a Fox holder, a famous Fox holder specifically, can benefit from, using the platform. Like, why would, a famous Fox holder want to use our platform over others in the space? And so, as it stands right now, the way that we charge a fee, it's 15% on the interest for a loan, and that's charged to the borrower. But if you are a famous Fox holder as a borrower, you pay half. So instead of that 15%, you pay 7.5%, and that's just on the interest. So just as an example, if interest is, one sol, you pay 0.15 as a fee, and if your famous Fox holder is 0.075. So huge benefit to those that are holders that are interested in borrowing or want to borrow, and a benefit as well on the lender's side because it's just would in theory lead to less defaults if fees on top of interest are less. So it's kind of a combination, and we will improve the system as we go forward. One thing that hasn't really necessarily been publicized with it that we're working on a bit more of structure to it, but just some alpha for folks here. We are planning on having like a leaderboard for Citrus, so that way folks can kind of track like their history for what they're doing. And then on top of that, we're looking at a very similar structure, at least right now, in doing some level of rewards for people in the form of a raffle because that's the easiest way for us to do it right now, just because we have kind of the structure for it. I'm kind of used to used to creating these raffles for people on a regular basis. I think the first one we'll do will be at the end of February, so it'll be in line with our second bi-monthly raffle that we host for rafflers. And it's just going to be a portion of revenue that we generate from citrus that will put into that specific prize pool for it. And the way that it'll work, we're still trying to figure out what to do with loans at default, um, because there's no fee assessed for it, so it's kind of a little bit of a difficult thing. And then at the same time too, it can be gamified, or games, not necessarily gamified. So we don't necessarily want to get into worrying about that. But as it stands right now, successful loans that just go their normal term. One ticket for every 100 SOL worth of volume on the lender's side, three tickets for every 100 SOL worth of volume on the borrower's side. Um, and again, that will count within whatever time period that we do. Since for the most part, loans are probably on average like 7 days, it'll most likely be a monthly thing that we do and not necessarily a bi-monthly to match up with rafflers. But it's just worth kind of throwing out there for folks that are interested in getting involved and then kind of seeing what the tertiary benefits are outside of just being either a lender or a borrower based off of your specific strategy. So again, we'll put out more information on that. We still have a little ways to go, but worth mentioning for those that are interested. And the last item worth mentioning in the quality of life is tier badges. So in raffles, we've gotten a lot of feedback primarily around like the due diligence side that people are doing for raffles and just ways we can improve or not necessarily to create like these red flags for people, but to give a little bit more insight as we've tried to improve the UI to the point that you can just, buy tickets right off the main page, which is great. But the main page itself, you get very little information from it unless they are a top 10 raffler. And um, from that side, we just want to make life easier for people. So we added in these tier badges. They're based off of number of raffles. So, you want to take that also with a grain of salt, depending on the name if you're not familiar with it. And as it stands, tier one as an example is less than 10 raffles. Tier two is 10 to 25 raffles. Tier three is 25 to 50. Tier four is 50 to 100, and tier five is 100 plus. There were people that were asking for like a tier six, a tier seven, a tier eight. The main goal is not prestige. The main goal is again like a due diligence side for trying to tell people like, hey, by the way, like this person's only created so many raffles. Now, on the contrary of that, people can say, oh, what if they create, 100 raffles that are point 0.2 SOL, per. Um, there's little we can do, against something like that. So again, there are like these are just ways to try to help people that are just creating accounts to make like the first, five raffles that they are creating like five D gods, and for people to see a D god up there, to go do extra DD on them. It's not a perfect system. It's just a way that we're trying to improve. If we start seeing, these patterns of people just creating 100 absolute nonsense raffles, I should say it's not just creating, it's completing 100 raffles. So completing 100 nonsense raffles just to get like that tier 5 badge and then, creating a DGOT or something. If they want to go through that much hassle, we'll try and figure out ways of making it, a little bit more difficult. But um, as it stands, it seems to be like a pretty decent model for folks, and we've gotten good feedback on it so far. So hopefully it helps overall with the raffle experience. If by chance it doesn't, or if there's something that we can kind of improve to do it better, definitely let us know. People have suggested to us to do it based off of volume instead of numbers. And again, that becomes a little bit tricky too, because just as an example, if you do one DGOD, you're talking 500 SOL versus a certain amount of raffles. Is one better than the other? I don't know. But just want to throw it out there that we are working on improving that system. And essentially, that's what that update was for, if anybody was curious on these tier badges that we've included. So that's our quality of life updates. I'll kind of pause for a quick second. Let me just see if there's been any pings of me in chats for questions. I don't think I see anything yet, but that's fine. I know I'll open it up too once we're all wrapped up. Was there a question?
It's too late, right?
Was that a question, HWI? Maybe not. Okay. I'm gonna leave them unmuted for now too, but we'll see. Jumping into missions and raids, they are officially live as of yesterday. The raid, the raid filled up so quick. I was mad. I had two thugs that were, um, ironically sent on fame only missions that I was like late for. So they ended 40 minutes after the raid went live, and of course I missed that. That filled. I think it was less than 20 seconds. It was pretty damn quick. Um, so shout out to those of you that were able to get in. I'm jelly. But yeah, so Thugs was the raid this week. As far as general missions go, we had a solo monster trainer level 40 plus, Shades and Spy Den, Shades level 40 plus, and the caveat with Shades. So the one thing that I think we'll try to do is maybe make like a graphic up that every time we post the initial post for missions, like we'll include like what the trait is and like the trait and den and like a graphic for you to give you an idea of what like the requirements are. I had somebody that confused synth sunglasses for shades, which is an easy one, of course. And I know Dev is like really big on the metadata, as we saw for the trio mission of hats, of any hats, once we launched it this week. But I think that could be helpful. So anyway, Shades level 40 plus is Spy Den. We had Duo for Vikings level 40 plus, Mutant level 40 plus, an Alien Den, and then two shirts or t-shirts level 40 plus in a Hobbit Den, and three of any hat level 40 plus. And and yeah, with the hat side, it was just really comical to see people going back and forth with Dev and a few others, because caps were not included in hats basically. And I too kind of joined in the fun in the, I don't know if it was in privates or I think it was actually in VC in our regular DAO chat, of just also dropping in, like scrolling through missions and seeing that I wasn't eligible to do the three hats, and then I look at the next one and I've got a backward camo cap. And I'm like, well, why can't that box go in that mission? But so I was razzing Dev with you guys. Um, but yeah, those missions are live. If you haven't launched yet, would highly recommend jumping in there. You can launch them until Thursday. And for what it's worth, is we are extending. I know it's the next part we have in here, but for the chest update, we're extending the redemption period for that until the 23rd, which should be next Thursday. Yeah, next Thursday. Um, Doing that for a couple of reasons. One of the bigger reasons is to make sure we have enough of a time period in there for folks to go in and do it. But then the second part is also the infra piece to missions to make sure all that's structured correctly and new tokens issued, all that kind of fun stuff and built into the contract. So didn't want to be hasty on it, as a lot of the dev time, I should say, was eaten up last week with Metaplex and Citrus. So didn't want to do anything half-assed. So we decided to just extend it an extra week. Uh, we did also publish a little bit more on like the details for it. So as it stands, um, TFFs will receive one chest, while FFFs will receive four chests after this period. And additionally, you'll be able to get an extra chest for every tier you've upgraded. And we will add in like more color to this. I know people were also asking questions around like the tier upgrades. Um, in order for a Fox to be considered a tier one or tier two, like they have to have both traits unlocked. So the head and the body have to be unlocked in order for that to count for the upgraded Fox. So even though there's a lot of level 40s out there, and there's a lot of level 40s that might have one or the other trait, an actual tier 1 Fox isn't considered until you have both of those traits unlocked for it. So um, just to let people know, you don't have to have them enabled. You can unlock them and not equip them. That's perfectly fine. For those that aren't familiar, that it all works on chain, but it's not necessarily the fact that you have to have them equipped. You can just unlock them, keep them there, keep the tier 0 traits, do a combination of them. For those that haven't messed around with it, FFF.WTF is an awesome resource to check out what your combinations look like, to figure out, which Fox combo you want to go with. But just to let people know that extra chest per that tier only gets unlocked with having a both traits paid for and unlocked for it. Um, and then one thing that I'll throw in here as kind of a caveat too, because I've seen in multiple um, areas, I think between like Raffle DAO and our Discord and just different spots, people were talking about like aren't wouldn't tier one TFFs basically be like OP compared to a Fox, because a tier one Fox in theory would get 5 chests, whereas 4 tier one TFFs would get 2 chests each, or 8 chests total. Um, the concept there isn't entirely wrong. It really depends on the availability for those foxes to be able to go on those missions, based off the traits and such that they have. And then you also have to build in the fact of purchasing the tier 1 upgrades for both the body and head for the TFFs as like an added cost for each individual one. So whereas for one famous fox it would cost you 20,000 Foxy, for a tier 1 fox it would cost you 80,000 Foxy for tier 1 TFFs. So things to consider, um, kind of weighing, which one is like more balanced, and trying to, I'll say, game the system some, as I know a lot of you guys are doing. But what's worth mentioning too with this change is that the rates might be adjusted some, just to adjust for in theory, the reduction in amount of chests emitted for tier 0 only, while building in kind of a little bit of a factor for tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 in the future. So I don't know if it's going to stay the exact same as where it's at now. It might be a little bit increased. But over time, we're obviously expecting more chests to be emitted. So the reward structure, ideally, we'd like to put it into a place where we don't have to tweak it based off of the number of chests that are being emitted. We can kind of handle the number of chests that get emitted every week based off of how many foxes go out on missions, and then if we want to, you know, add some chests in or do something like that with other fun ways, we can kind of gamify our reward system. We don't have to worry about doing adjustments to the individual drop rates, which I think will be a big win, and it won't incentivize hoarding, as that's been, one of the bigger problems for us to try to transition into a reward structure like this, the scalability structure. And then the last thing, now I've been droning on for 20 some minutes, is us bringing on a new Fox to our team. So, huge shout out to Melvin. Melvin is joining us to spearhead Instagram, and, I'll say dabble a little bit in the Twitter side, but primarily from just a content gathering or data gathering side. But he's going to be, helping out with creating content, getting things kind of rolling on the Instagram side. Um, the one thing that's quite interesting is looking actually at the Pudgy Penguins Instagram. I know they're from the East side, but they've got quite an impressive following and quite an impressive amount of engagement on Instagram. Wasn't really something that I knew other projects were like semi-successful with, and to what degree I'm not exactly sure from a, I don't know if you want to call it a monetary standpoint or what have you, but it seems like it's a pretty, good overall benefit for their brand, and we don't really see many negatives to to attempting it. So Melvin, reached out and we're interested in having him on. So definitely looking forward to checking out Fox's Instagram game and all that fun stuff. Maybe a little bit of TikTok. I don't know. He sent over some crazy ideas, and I'm more than happy to just let him go nuts with it. But I know that I would probably die pretty quickly on TikTok, as it's not my favorite social media platform. But yeah, I think that kind of wraps up my main announcements that I have. So I'll open it up to questions. Again, feel free to send in text questions, ping me when you do. That way I can see and respond to them. And or if not, if you want to just talk, more than happy with that as well. Also, that platypus is super cute on number
Holding my
40,
spot.
number
So
45.
if 45 gets pulled, it's me.
Did you just import a GLB model of platypus and just throw it in there?
Maybe.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Oh my God, there's more.
There's more platypuses.
Platypi?
Platypi? I don't know what's the plural.
Platypodes?
Yeah, platypodes. There's really no questions. Is everyone just like done on a Monday? Does Monday just like absolutely suck for people?
I was crunching on time because I was making my way through the gym to get back on time.
I'll, I'll ask a question just for the sake of asking.
Go for
Any
it.
update on TFF upgrades?
You
You have
mean
a
like as far
date? I
as
know
far
it's
as like
coming.
when goes?
Yeah,
Um, Let me see. Let me see what's the last thing that we had put in here. Because I know like I want to say soon, but I'm pretty sure the general plan is to structure this to be on top of when we update the chests. So if that gives you any hints.
no problem. Thanks.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I don't think we've put like an official date. Dev's not a big fan of us doing official dates, but I would say within the next 2 weeks. And Dev can Giga destroy me later if he wants to. That's fine. I'll take it.
Dude, I get so much PTSD from the portal's door closing noise because for so long it was just people crashing from the foxes.
Well, that and then you've got like the bleep sound when people are joining.
It's the crash sound that worries me. It's fine with people joining. As soon as the door starts slamming, I'm like, oh God, here we go.
That's so
But it
funny.
definitely seems like well, how many actual Fox 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 10 on screen? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 on screen.
Wait, can you see
Yeah,
me?
yeah, I see you.
Okay.
Am I miscounting? Am I missing one of the tiny ones?
No, no, no,
1,
no.
2,
When you're
3,
in,
4, 5,
yeah,
6,
when you're
7,
in the camera
8, 9,
mode, it
10.
doesn't show your body.
Okay, yeah, it's 11, and it seems like it's pretty good. It's definitely moving pretty smooth for me. Oh God, there we go again.
Yep,
Oh,
that
it was
was.
Gomez. I doubt he crashed.
Yeah, I was gonna say that was someone that
he
definitely
just
just.
he just wanted to trigger my PTSD really quick.
That makes sense. Um, but yeah, that's sounds good to me. Let's see, anything else?
There's like, get on with it, man. Give us the shit.
I mean, I'm fine with that. If you guys are fine with that, I'm fine with that. Let's see if someone ping me in Fed. Let me see.
Oh, someone asked you a question.
The reward tiers change FFTFF. Actual rewards purchase changing. So yeah, so Finna, it's a good question. The structure for it will be similar to making four chests akin to one chest that they are today. So, you know, with a fox getting what anywhere from 600 to 1200 foxy, give or take, as an example, in the new chest structure, it would be like 150 to um 300-ish like per chest. But aside from that, like the other drop rates will not be like or it'll be like inversely impacted. So when you take the total amount of chests that are emitted, the amount of rewards would be similar for like a tier 0 structure as they are today. So in theory, the rewards will increase for tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 for those individual foxes over time. And if you want to kind of compare it like having one of each fox right now, a TFF and an FFF. In current state, you get 2 chests, which in theory would be like the equivalent of 8 chests. Having a tier 3 TFF and a tier 3 FFF, in theory, would get you 12 chests versus 8 chests. So if you look at it from a overall reward increase, and it's primarily on the FFF side, um, but it does also include like that balance from the TFF angle in order to give out more rewards for those holders as well. So it's if you want to look at it as like a little bit of a nerf, it's kind of like a temporary nerf for some TFFs. But at the same time, it does increase the overall rewards for the project, um, with foxes being included in that bucket. Yeah, and a likely story, Gomez. Question asked about the cost for a TFF upgrade. Yeah, it'd be the same. Right now, the current plan is to keep it the same as it is for FFFs. So it would be 10,000 for the body and 10,000 for the head. And welcome, Red Links, to your first VC. Brave overall, taxing and treasury. It's just more chests. Advising FFF encourage use of foxes for traits and such. Yep, exactly. Yeah, it's that's a very good point as far as like the first level here about overtaxing treasury. Um, yeah, mean in theory, like over time, it will definitely increase the emissions that we're giving out for rewards, which isn't a bad thing with our current model. It's just based off of like how scalable can we make it. Because just as an example, over the past 3 months, give or take, maybe 4 months. We increased the soul rewards from chests by 200%, give or take, for a few reasons. But for us to be able to do that in like the historical model that we've had, or legacy model, if you will, like going forward, it essentially will be easier for us to be able to give more rewards to foxes that are, I don't know if I can call it dedicated, more hardcore, doing the weekly shit or whatever you want to consider it, but
Rewarding time.
rewarding time, yeah, which is important. And what I'll also throw out there too for some people, especially if you're newer foxes, we are planning to increase fame only missions. I know I've given dev like a whole like big structured plan around how to kind of handle fame only missions based off of fox levels currently. Um, but with scalable rewards, I think it will make life a bit easier as far as making available options for missions more available than just doing the 6 per week, having lower and higher level requirements for missions, and kind of being able again to scale like rewards for tier 0, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 foxes, based off of what's going out that week. And just to kind of throw out there an example, if we were to put out, a tier 2 mission for whatever right now, um, it's going to be trait dependent. There's only a handful of people that would be able to do it. So, there'd be like 4 or 5 people, that'd be able to get, what, six chests? 6 chests, versus, the rest of the people that can't participate in that particular mission. And if that's one of 6 and only 5 people can do it, it doesn't make sense for us to run that mission. We'd much rather have, 5, 6, 700 people, or foxes eligible to go on a mission right now in our current reward structure. In the future, we can make it so they're, I don't know how overwhelmed dev would get, if we had 10 or so missions where, people can go in there more often and do them. If a lot of them are tier 0 based, a few that are tier 1, a couple that are tier 2 based, and having, foxes be able to go in and complete these other kinds of missions. They might be eligible for a tier 0 and a tier 2 mission, so they'd have to figure out, obviously they want to go on a tier 2 mission, but I think it adds more to that like gamified element and just allows us to go a little bit crazier than we've already, have been going with the 6 missions a week plus a raid every couple of weeks. So there's a lot more to be built out in that model once we have this scalability into it. Let's see, another ping in here, last ping. Will there be a change to the fame accrual rate for TFFs? Yeah, that's a good question. That's something we're talking about internally, and just to try to figure out what does make the most sense. Um, this is coming from me as Drax, not famous foxes. I'd like to get to a model where TFF fame accrual is the same as FFF fame accrual. Um, that might come with some trade-offs, and I think Dev would probably murder me if I asked him if there's a way in which just suck can be used within like that specific species of foxes, because then I wouldn't want people to essentially try to gain fame from a cheaper fox, if that makes sense, if they're earning it at the same rate. So that's just something that we have to take into consideration. I think that would require a lot of changes to it, but as of right now, we haven't put out anything publicly around fame changes for foxes quite yet. So I would say, just keep an eye out. We are discussing it internally to try and figure out what does make the most sense going forward. And in an ideal world, I think once the levels, I mean, the levels have always been the same, but once the reward structure is set up to be scalable and there's already things kind of cooked into the pricing, if you will, the pricing disparity between the collections, in my mind, it wouldn't make much sense to not have a similar fame emissions for foxes. Just keeping in mind that there are some bigger infra changes that would have to happen within our tooling system, and we wouldn't want to break anything. So I'll just put that out there. Yeah, yeah, and that's definitely true, more so from a long-term perspective. So great questions, Finno. Really appreciate that.